What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe.
It's one thing to know how bad a situation is through talking about it and thinking about it, even watching it. And like, we know the Saints' offensive play calling has been bad, right? Like, Nick Underhill's written about how they do less motion than anybody in the league, less play action than anybody in the league. But when that exists independently of context, you're like, oh, that sucks. That's so annoying. But you don't actually know how bad it is. And so there's this dude online, Patent Analytics, who ranks play callers. And he comes up with all sorts of ways to rank play callers. And my God, Pete Carmichael is not just – okay, I'll say it like this. He's not just bad. He's not just very bad. He's not just putrid. He's not just awful. He's not even LSU defense bad. He is by multiple orders of magnitude the worst offensive play caller in the entirety of the NFL, and it's not even close. In fact, in a sign of just a rivalry that throughout its entire history has been filled with just ineptitude and complete crap, the only play caller that even sniffs Pete Carmichael's jock is Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
So, like, Arthur Smith and Pete Carmichael are by far the two worst play callers in the NFL. And so there's a bar graph, and Taylor, put it on the screen here. The first one, the ranking offensive play callers after Week 10. And basically, Patton says, it's all Mike McDaniel's world, and we are just living it. And all you need to understand with the bar graph, it just measures offensive efficiency or whatever, right? And Mike McDaniel is, as bad as Pete Carmichael is, Mike McDaniel is that good.
Right.
Like, he is lapping the field, basically, when it comes to how high he is on the bar graph. Look at who's second on this list. Kyle Shanahan.
The names we always throw out there, yeah.
Who's third? Todd Monken. Why do you think Georgia finally won those national championships? They had Todd Monken. Kellen Moore.
Yeah, take
fourth.
that, Taylor.
Who do we got? This is a bit surprising. Ken Dorsey, fifth in the list, and they just fired that man.
Just fired
and
him.
you can't fire Pete Carmichael? Okay,
Yeah.
Sorry. Andy Reid, sixth. Brian Johnson, seventh. That's the Eagles OC. And then, of course, Kevin O'Connell at eighth. I'm not going to go down the whole list, even though actually Ben Johnson, Detroit Bears mentioned as well.
Yeah.
But Kevin O'Connell, a lot of people said, if you switched the coaching staffs last week, well, the game would have been different. Probably would have. So that's all people scoring on the those are the top 10 guys.
Yeah.
And they all score on the positive side of this equation. In the middle, there's a flipping point. Actually, Sean McVay is the median coach, and then you start to get in the negative side of the equation. And if you look at the bottom five, it's Matt Canada, Mike Kafka, the Giants OC, Bill O'Brien for the Patriots, which apparently the Patriots actually for the last 4 years, Darren Orlovsky was tweeting today, Patriots, worst protection grades, worst average separation by receivers. It's an awful situation.
Yep.
You got the Raiders, you got the Falcons, and then you have Pete Carmichael. And again, I hope you see the chart because Pete Carmichael, we are talking him ranking literally quadruple times worse than Matt Canada, somebody that we all love to clown. So when we tell you there is talent on this team and it is being wasted, this is one of about two different charts that we're going to show you that's going to blow your mind.
T-Bob, we also probably need to point out, we're talking about offensive play callers right now, but we also have another graphic and another metric that actually confirms he is the worst play caller, offense or defense in the NFL. So literally the worst person in the NFL that calls in a ball play.
That's true. So again, he has assigned, and I didn't do a deep dive into how the numbers are mathed out here because this came across my screen relatively late. But I'll just give you kind of the scores, right? So who was the best play caller in the NFL? We said it was Mike McDaniel.
Yeah.
So on the offensive side of the ball, he has a plus 0.77 score. If you look at Pete Carmichael, he has a minus 0.92. So to give you an idea, nobody hits a full 1.0 or a full negative 1.0. Everybody falls in that range. The best on the offensive side of the ball is 0.77. Okay, so let's just call it like 77%.
Yeah.
You're negative 92%. Even Arthur Smith, who we just crapped on, negative 0.72.
Yep.
So you were talking about being 20% worse than Arthur Smith. It's just a complete. So yeah, like you said, Jake, who's the worst defensive play caller
I think
according
it's
to this
Vance
chart?
Joseph Broncos.
At 0.59.
Yeah.
Half of how bad Pete Carmichael is. It's unreal. They continue to
That's
ride
a
with this
defensive
man.
coordinator that got 70 hung on him,
70.
and he's half of what Pete Carmichael is.
And then, so the final chart that we look at, this is play caller ratings compared to easy button usage, right? So this is a combination of where did you rank on these last charts, and then how often are you helping yourself out? The easy buttons are your RPOs, play actions, motions, and screens. Well, it's a scatter dot chart, right? So the best are going to be at your scatter plot. I think it might be what it's called. I'm not a stats guy. It's just major. But your best guys are going to be in your top right corner.
Yeah.
Your worst are going to be in your bottom left. Most people fall somewhere in the middle. The outliers are Mike McDaniel, who is at the peak top right of the corner. He uses the most easy button play usage and has the most success. And then in an equivalently outlier sense, nobody even sniffing the same realm as Pete Carmichael, and the way bottom left alone all by himself is Pete Carmichael, who uses less than 10%. This may maybe be like 18% to be nice to him. 18% easy button usage. Like even Arthur Smith, who's awful, uses over 60%. When you're talking about motions, RPOs, play actions, this is inexcusable. Inexcusable. And the final piece of evidence that we would pair it with, Dan Orlovsky not naming the Saints, but in my mind, essentially subtweeting the Saints. The top offenses in the NFL, all of them have plenty of, 1, pre and at the snap motion, 2, personnel and formation flexibility, and 3, heavy use of play, heavy use of play action. Yet teams think they can run offenses that don't have these elements to be successful. That's on coaching 100%. Do you know how much film Dan Orlovsky watches? Do the guys of a man that played 12 years of NFL quarterback? That man knows the NFL game inside and out. He knows the current NFL offensive meta, and he is telling you how absolutely absurd it is that your New Orleans Saints are so prideful and so hubristic that they think they can go out there and put an offense on the field that runs no play action, no pre-snap motion, no personnel formation flexibility, and still just think they're going to somehow be successful. I mean, if you just fired Ken Dorsey, I'm sorry. There is no way that Pete Carmichael, forget about after the season, there is no way that Pete Carmichael should survive the rest of this season.
No, I mean, because you're in a playoff run. I mean, with all those things still going on, you still atop your division. And if you're in the car, maybe you can't see some of these graphics that T-Bob has put up. The Dolphins, they're on top of Mount Everest, and you're in hell.
Yep.
That's probably the best way to show you where these graphics are and kind of where these two teams are. You have to be better, but we have just seen that you're not going to be better. You're not going to change. I can't tell you and can't stress enough. And look, I haven't played in the NFL in 9 years. But even at that time in the NFL, it's about shifts. It's about motions. It's about seeing what the defense is giving you. It's about giving them a different look. It's about creating a mismatch because you're on the move. Like, it is indicators. It helps your quarterback. It makes it easy for him. He has the opportunity to see if it's zone, see if it's man. You get a chance to maybe create a mismatch because of one of those shifts that you do, and you have so many players like an AK, like a Taysom Hill that could create a mismatch just by moving them around, seeing how the defense reacts. And the defense, they might not be able to get in their best play call because you're moving. You're not staying in the same place. Hell, flag football. If you're staying in the same place, I can call a defense and I can just line up and play every single time. I don't have to worry about adjustments. I don't have to worry about, hey, we're in man. Can you follow him if he goes in motion? They're lining up and basically saying we're better than you, and you're never better than that defense right now.
At a time when every other team has already accepted that that's just simply untrue. That all the analytics we just talked about, all the numbers, all the base level statistics just point to that being untrue, and yet you have so much pride you think you're just going to be the one to be able to get it done. If it seems like maybe Derek Carr's frustrated with Pete Carmichael, I get it. I also understand now why they brought John Gruden in to consult over the summer and to see, what does Derek Carr do well? Not that Pete Carmichael listened, because what Derek Carr does well is play action. You don't do it. It's unbelievable. Pete Carmichael doesn't know what he's doing.
You can even run.
Bottom line, Pete Carmichael just does not know what he's doing.
You can still run the same route concepts with motion, but it puts pressure on the defense. Like whatever. Like instead of just running a normal drag from the outside receiver position, you can have a slot, you can have the outside receiver, you motion the outside receiver to stack behind the slot receiver, and then that puts pressure on the defense because they don't know which way you're going to break. As the back receiver in this scenario, the guy that's motioning, you can go take 2 steps out, get the guy's hips turned, and then you run your slant. I mean, it's basic.
Yeah.
It's easy concepts where you're just trying to manipulate the defense, and instead you just line up and think that you're better than them. And that is – like, that's what you do in high school when you're the top team in the district and you're playing the worst team in the district. That's not college football. That's not NFL. That's like that to me is something you only do when you're like so much better than your opponent that you almost don't even want to show anything against them. But we're in the NFL. You are not that.
Dylan Pellerin says Pete isn't getting fired in the offseason. He's DA's scapegoat. Well, let's be clear about this. Well, and I agree with you on the offseason thing, and I think that's absurd. The Saints view themselves like the Steelers, right? They view themselves as, like, very hesitant to make changes, and they want to give guys time to figure things out. But this is such an abject disaster. There should be no figure out. Ken Dorsey just got fired because the Bills fell to 5-5. The Bills were one of the best offenses in the league last year. For the last couple of years. He again, even on these play calling metrics, he ranks top 5 in the league. But just because they're 5-5 and Josh Allen doesn't look like Josh Allen, they fired that man. And you're going to wait and give Pete Carmichael the rest of the season? And it's so bad, Jake, that I don't even buy that it's like this idea that, well, who could you bring in to have more success? I think you could bring somebody in and you could start to employ some of these very basic concepts that would lead to more success than what you have currently. And as far as
in the NFL too, you can change so many things week to week. It's not college football.
Look at Josh
it's not
Dobbs.
High school football. Yeah, you can
Look at
change.
Josh Dobbs.
It's your job. You're there like a normal job, 9 to 5. NFL job, it's 5:30 a.m. to about 6 p.m. Every single day, and that's what it is. That's the job. You get Tuesdays off. You're there. You're there for those reasons. Hey, the game plan we used last week, you might not see that again until week 10. Like, that's just the way it is. And you have so many things up, and, hey, we're going to call this motion that. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. You're a grown adult. You're a professional. You change it all the time. Someone could come in, T, and look at what the Saints play calls already are and what they call motions and shifts and whatever. Even if they didn't have them, they could add them. But they could have a game plan together in 3 days.
Yeah. And we've seen it. I mean, we've seen it multiple times here recently. So the idea of him being DA's scapegoat, so I don't love the term scapegoat because I think, like Matt House and this LSU defense, I think he's legitimately costing DA wins. Now, that still is on DA, right? Because he chose to ride with this man who is clearly deficient and who is clearly miles behind the times and miles behind the field. And so ultimately that responsibility lies with the head coach. It's just how these situations work. But to call him a scapegoat makes, like, let's be clear, Pete Carmichael is responsible for a lot of these losses, arguably more so than anybody else in the entire franchise. Pedro says Carmichael be a worse OC than Matt House as a DC. Both has cost their teams multiple wins. Yeah, I don't even, I mean, It's when I saw these charts,
I will say the
Orlovsky
difference.
tweets, it is mind-boggling and how bad it is.
If you're comparing those two, obviously different levels of football, but I would say Pete Carmichael has better players.
Yes, very
available
true.
to him
Didn't
than Matt
like,
House
yes,
does.
Like I think a lot of Matt House's almost yips that he seems to have is because he is so limited personnel-wise, and he's just done an awful job of trying to manage within that. But that's hard. That's much harder to do than having, and granted, you could say, oh, what about Saints offensive line? Fair, but they play better as of late, right? And you're not doing them any favor when you're not doing pre-snap motions. You're making it really on the
no
easy
play
on the
action,
defense.
slow
exactly
rush down.
coming. Yeah, no play action. Like, he's not doing a bad O-line any favors in the same way that Matt House is not doing a bad secondary any favors. And so it's an utter disaster. And the Saints got to do something about it. It is inexcusable that Pete Carmichael should continue to be allowed to call plays for this team. I mean, even the rest of this season, but whatever. You want to roll with the rest of this year, fine, do it. But if change isn't made after the season, like, Saints fans should literally think about, like, selling their season tickets out of spite, out of strike. Even though, I mean, honestly, I know that just sucks for that person in the end of the day, because they lose season tickets, they're probably going to want back later. So don't do that. But this is ridiculous. Something's got to change.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the two guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.